How can they still allow hunting? It's barbaric. Hunters like to call themselves sportsmen, but what's the sport in killing poor, defenseless little animals?
But it's not like some video game. You don't just go into the woods and the animals are there waiting for you. There's a definite challenge to hunting.
What about tomorrow? I mean, I want to make sure that there's plenty of wildlife around for my children.
Hunters help wildlife, not hurt it. That's good, Kim. Yeah, let's help wildlife by killing it.
Who do you think pays for conservation? Sportsmen do.
Sure, so they can go out and kill some more.
You can't say it's morally wrong to hunt and then go to your favorite restaurant and order a 12-ounce steak. Hunting is just legalized murder.
Why do we have more deer today than we've had in 100 years?
Shooting helpless animals with high-tech rifles doesn't seem like much of a challenge to me.
We don't need to hunt for food anymore. You hunt to kill.
Barbaric.
It's not like you
order a 12-ounce
Hunt to kill.
Sound familiar? With an issue as emotional as hunting, it seems like everyone has an opinion they don't mind sharing with you. Sometimes it's hard to hear through all the shouting and rhetoric and focus on the facts. Because even with a controversial topic like hunting, there must be things that are clearly true and things that are clearly not. That's what this program is about. I'm Robin Connors, and I represent the Council for Wildlife Conservation and Education. The Council's mission is to educate all Americans, but particularly young Americans, on important conservation issues. I was invited to moderate a local high school debate on the subject of hunting. As you saw, the debate got a little heated at times. But let's see if we can draw some facts from the emotions and opinions. Before we get back to the debate, let's review the 4 basic topics that were discussed. The first issue is related to the anti-hunters' claim that hunting is killing off our remaining wildlife. Is this true or not? Are hunters threatening a dwindling wildlife resource? The second issue deals with the morality of hunting. Is hunting the noble, age-old tradition that hunters would have us believe? Or is it a cruel and indefensible blood sport? Do hunters have an unfair advantage over their prey? The third issue that we debated examined the ethical implications of hunting. Do hunters follow the law? Do they respect the rights of others? In short, are hunters good sportsmen? The last issue we'll look at is hunting's place in America today. Has it outlived its usefulness? Or is hunting still a valid activity in our modern society? Those were the topics. Now let's review the ground rules for the debate.
Okay, kids, let's split up in 2 groups now.
A class of high school seniors was divided into a pro-hunting group and an anti-hunting group. Students were free to pick which side they wanted to join. Both sides were given the same background information on hunting. Students were given 2 weeks to study the information and develop an argument for their position. Each group elected 2 students to represent it. Now let's see how the debate went. Okay, I understand Carla and Michael will represent the anti-hunting side of the debate. Kim and Jason, the pro-hunting side? As moderator, I'll pose a question to begin each phase of the debate. We have 4 basic areas I'd like to cover. One team will have the opportunity to state their case on each issue. Then the other team can have a chance to respond before we move to the next topic. Any questions?
Nope.
Good. Then the first issue I'd like to hear your opinions on is the claim that hunting is endangering our wildlife. Are we headed for a future with no wildlife, or much less wildlife, unless we end hunting? Carla and Michael, what do the anti-hunters have to say about this?
Every time a hunter kills an animal, that's one less animal. And I don't see how we can ever have too much wildlife, so I'm against hunting on those grounds. It just seems to me that we should protect and treasure what little wildlife we have left.
Absolutely. There's plenty of healthy ways to get outdoors and commune with wildlife without killing it. I mean, I want to make sure that all species are around for future generations. And that's going to be a lot harder with hunting around.
Your response?
I'm not going to try to convince anybody to hunt or not, but if you do hunt, the last thing you need to worry about is killing off wildlife. If state wildlife agencies thought that any species was in danger of extinction from hunting or anything else, they would take steps to protect that species.
Yeah, and it's not just the state agencies who would come to the rescue. It's hunters themselves.
What?
It's true. When habitat destruction and commercial exploitation threatened many species of wildlife over 100 years ago, It was the hunters who stepped up to the plate and demanded protection for wildlife. And they're also the ones who forked up the money to make conservation happen.
And there's no reason to believe that any other group is going to pay for those programs if hunting were outlawed. The focus shouldn't be so much on the individual animals, but on the entire species. Because a deer is going to die in the wilderness from old age, starvation, anything, and there's nothing pro or anti-hunters could do about that. But what we can do is ensure a healthy future for the entire species. That's what we need to concentrate on, and that's what hunter-supported wildlife management is all about.
Yeah, I've read all about the success of wildlife management bringing species back. But I mean, come on. Don't you think hunters have a cynical motive for paying for these programs? I mean, don't you think they just want more game to hunt next season? Look, the Fund for Animals says that the state wildlife agencies spend 90% of their funding on game species, even though game species don't even make up the majority of each state's wildlife population. I mean, they say that wildlife management is out to conserve hunting just as much as wildlife itself.
Wildlife management is a subject that comes up all the time in discussions about hunting. You just heard our debaters mention it. In simple terms, wildlife management is a science that helps wildlife species get the food and habitat they need to sustain themselves in healthy numbers. Let's hear about the effect of hunting from a wildlife management professional.
There's plenty of room for debating the issue of hunting, but the claims that hunting is endangering North America's wildlife are completely unfounded. In fact, the truth is quite the opposite. By 1900, habitat destruction and commercial exploitation had reduced our white-tailed deer population to just 500,000. Today, there are more than 20 million. Wild turkeys were reduced to dangerously low levels in the 1930s. However, today there are nearly 5.5 million birds in 49 states. Pronghorn antelope populations were reduced to below 12,000 individuals. Today there are nearly 1 million. The wood duck was near extinction, but today there are more than 5.5 million. Rocky Mountain elk were down to a low of about 40,000. Today we have nearly 1 million. All of these species are commonly hunted, so it's obvious that hunting is not endangering their populations. Hunting today is too well regulated by state and federal wildlife agencies to allow that to happen. These agencies use scientific principles of wildlife management to determine when and how many animals may be taken in order to maintain healthy wildlife populations. In the final analysis, hunting is a help, not a hindrance to the future well-being of wildlife.
We've seen some anti-hunting groups acknowledge that wildlife management programs paid for by hunters have helped certain species rebound from dangerously low numbers. But as we heard Michael say, some wonder if the reason hunters support these programs is to artificially inflate wildlife populations so they can justify hunting. This leads right into the issue of the morality of hunting. Let's hear what our debaters have to say about topic number 2. The facts support the claim that hunters pay up to $1 billion annually for conservation. What do the anti-hunters have to say about this?
Well, like I said, I don't question the success of wildlife management. I just, wonder why hunters support it. I think it's for their own selfish amusement, not for any real concern about wildlife.
Yeah, I mean, hunters can brag all they want about how they support conservation, but if they truly cared about wildlife, they certainly wouldn't entertain themselves by killing helpless animals and then calling themselves sportsmen for doing so.
Carla, you just said that animals are helpless. Let's talk about that. Why?
Because it's one-sided and unfair, and hunters have the advantage. They have all this fancy technology, but the animals, they don't have any technology. The deck is definitely stacked in favor of the hunter.
With hunters having such a big advantage, ecological balance is totally thrown off whack. The Fund for Animals claims that mankind, with all its technology, has become a super predator who upsets the natural ecological patterns. Natural selection just doesn't work when the prey has no chance to escape.
How would the pro-hunters respond to those comments?
I can understand if some people find hunting cruel. If someone finds the idea of killing an animal distasteful, that's fine. I respect that. I would respect it even more if that person were a vegetarian and didn't rely on someone else to kill for them so they could have their big, fat, juicy hamburger. there is a definite challenge to hunting. And statistics show that the game wins up more often than the hunter.
There are about 18 million hunters in America today, 4 times as many as 100 years ago. Now there are 40 times as many deer. Now if hunting were so easy, and hunters had such a big advantage, wouldn't it be the other way around? I mean, the numbers indicate to me that the deer are doing pretty well.
The anti-hunters feel that hunting is exploitative of animals and disruptive to nature. The pro-hunters maintain that hunting is indeed a contest, and a difficult one at that. Let's hear from some experts on this issue.
A common misconception about hunting is that the end result is automatic. A hunter walks into the woods, picks out an animal, and pulls the trigger. The actual act of hunting is much more complex and difficult. That's why it's called hunting and not just shooting. Having the proper equipment, understanding safety, learning how to read terrain, looking for signage, and tracking game all are vital components of hunting. There is a definite mental and physical challenge to all of this, and success is far from automatic. On the national average, a hunter will hunt for several seasons before he or she is successful. That statistic would certainly indicate a true contest between hunter and game.
Related to the claim that hunting is cruel and unfair is the contention that hunters are not true sportsmen. Many people who oppose hunting have no problem with hunting itself. They just don't like the behavior of hunters. What about hunters themselves? What kind of person hunts? Kim and Jason?
Well, there are 18 million hunters in America, and they make up a real cross-section of the population. I mean, men, women, rich, poor, young, old. I mean, pretty much every demographic is represented by hunters.
Most people have this image of hunters like they come from rural parts of the country, but there are plenty of city residents who enjoy their seasonal hunting trips. There are as many different types of hunters as there are different types of Americans, from rock stars to presidents to your next door neighbor.
I don't care who hunts or where they live. I care what they do once they're in the woods. And all I ever hear about is how hunters break laws and trespass, litter, shoot road signs, strap dead animals to their car like it's some kind of trophy. Basically behaving like Neanderthals.
Look, I'm sure there's respectable, well-behaved hunters, but, I mean, come on, that seems like the exception. I mean, to me, hunting is a bunch of guys going out into the woods with a cooler full of beer, high-powered rifles, you know, trying to shoot anything that moves and feed their egos. You know, competing to see who can get the biggest buck or the one with the biggest horns. I mean, how do you justify that kind of thing? I mean, you'd think, being in the 21st century, we'd be beyond all that kind of stuff.
And we haven't even mentioned that hunters break the law every time they trespass and vandalize property. For all the talk about wildlife management and regulated hunting, lots of hunters just shoot what they want, when they want.
That's completely untrue, Carla. Look, are there some bad hunters? Sure. But it's only a fraction. I mean, there are bad parents, bad teachers, and some bad students, too. And you want to talk about breaking the law? What about anti-hunters and animal rights groups? Don't they break the law by destroying laboratories or by releasing animals from zoos?
Yeah, let's not make it look like all hunters are savage brutes and all anti-hunters are all angels.
Talking about the ethics of hunters really seem to get the debate heated up. Are hunters truly good sportsmen? Do they respect the rules of their sport? Do they care about the rights of others? Let's talk to some people closer to the issue.
Researchers have tried to determine public perceptions about hunters, whether they're viewed as responsible sportsmen or not. It's interesting to compare the results between those who have frequent contact with hunters and those who rarely, if ever, meet hunters in person. Among those who live in urban areas, for example, only 3 out of 10 think that hunters respect the rights of others. But among farmers and landowners, folks who have frequent contact with hunters, 7 out of 10 think that hunters respect the rights of others. Among conservation officers, whose job it is to help enforce hunting rules and regulations, 9 out of 10 think that hunters also respect the rights of others. So it's clear that those who think hunters are poor sportsmen are likely basing their opinion not on personal experience, but on old stereotypes. But those who have frequent contact with hunters, landowners, farmers, and conservation officers, recognize that the vast majority of hunters are responsible sportsmen.
Let's hear what our debaters had to say about the final and most complex issue of the hunting debate. The last issue I'd like to hear your thoughts on is the relevance of hunting in our modern 21st century society. Is hunting still an acceptable activity today, or has hunting become obsolete? A cruel and unnecessary activity with no place in America's future. I'd like to hear from the pro-hunting side first. How would you defend hunting's place in America today?
Hunting has always had its place in society, and it still does today. Hunting is an historical fact of our existence. We could have 100 debates like this every day for the next 100 years, but it is not going to change the fact that hunters have contributed more to wildlife conservation than any other group. You can question their motives if you want to, but you can't question their accomplishments. I mean, I don't see any hunting eradicators supporting a federal tax in support of any meaningful wildlife conservation. By being in the woods and by hunting wild game just like our ancestors did, we become more in touch with our past and who we truly are.
The Humane Society of the United States does not agree. Let me quote. The Humane Society of the United States believes that a civilized society should not condone the killing of any sentient creature as sport. The characterization of wild animals as game denies their intrinsic value and belittles their ecological importance. The society finds that a great deal of wildlife killed for management reasons actually is killed as game for sporting purposes. I feel we shouldn't hunt and try to manage animals. We should let nature just take its course.
Let nature take its course. Let me think about that for a second. So instead of having a deer population of about 20 million, for example, controlled by wildlife management and hunting, Carla would rather see a much smaller population controlled by habitat destruction, starvation, disease, collisions with cars. That doesn't sound too humane to me. In fact, it sounds like all you care about is stopping hunting and not really helping wildlife.
As I expected, that was one of the more emotional exchanges. But major conservation groups have their own positions on this difficult issue. Let's hear what they have to say.
The National Wildlife Federation is the nation's largest conservation organization. We exist to conserve wildlife. That can and does include hunting when regulated by professional fish and wildlife managers. Now, we understand that some people oppose hunting or choose not to do it themselves. But we also recognize that the most fundamental problem facing wildlife today is not hunting, it is habitat loss. Therefore, the National Wildlife Federation believes that hunters and non-hunters alike should work together to conserve habitat. And if they do so, the wildlife of our country will have a much brighter future.
Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. Would each side like to say something in summation? Anti-hunting first, please.
I'd like to sum up our opposition by saying that hunting's time is past. It's no longer necessary to go out and hunt for food, and that's historically what hunting is all about, not sport. I mean, it's not done out of necessity, then it's done out of cruelty. We think that mankind has evolved beyond the need to hunt.
If you're looking for the truth in the hunting debate, I've got it for you. I put at the top of your list of facts that hunters kill. And I don't care if it's 1 out of 3 years, or 4 years, or 5 years. It could be 25 years. It's still too much. This is a barbaric sport, and it needs to be eradicated.
We have made so much progress in wildlife conservation in our nation, yet we still allow the indiscriminate slaughter of wildlife by millions of people who claim they're sportsmen. And they justify the murder and relieve their guilt by throwing a couple dollars to so-called conservation.
Kim and Jason?
I'll just repeat the first thing I said today. I'm not trying to convince anybody to hunt or not. But if you do hunt and you do it ethically and responsibly, you don't have to justify it. It's a healthy American tradition, and it does no harm to our environment or wildlife.
I believe much of the controversy that surrounds hunting, it stems from a lack of understanding. You see, any hunters view hunting from a distance, perhaps only on anti-hunting presentations on television. And they don't understand, and they don't like what they see. But what our pro-hunting team has tried to do is to show that hunters have interests and motivations that go far beyond what we see from a distance or on television. See, for most deer hunters, the season ends unsuccessfully. But they come back the next autumn and the autumn after that because their motivation goes far beyond killing. And so we don't ask the anti-hunters to join us. We simply ask you guys to attempt to understand our centuries-old commitment to a responsible, worthwhile, and conservation-based tradition.
At the beginning of this program, I said the debate would attempt to help us cut through the rhetoric, and I believe we've arrived at some facts. But you are the ultimate judge. How did our debaters do? Let's review the 4 major points that we debated and see what conclusions we can draw. Everyone may still not agree, but it's certainly hard to argue with the first conclusion. It's that hunting, regulated by the principles of wildlife management, does not pose any threat to the well-being of any species of wildlife. Species with adequate habitat can be hunted during regulated seasons with no threat to their abundance in the future. The second fact is that there is a definite challenge to hunting. The hunter does not simply walk into the woods and pick out an animal to shoot while the animal has no chance to escape. On the national level, it takes a hunter several years of hunting before he or she is successful. In some states, it's even higher. The third fact the debate uncovered is that there are some hunters who do not deserve the right to hunt. Although research suggests that most hunters are good sportsmen, there are some who are lawbreakers and who cannot be considered sportsmen in any sense. These few rotten apples reflect badly on other hunters, and they are a big reason why many people have negative feelings about hunting.
Yeah, I can live with that.
The final fact is that the choice to hunt or not really comes down to you personally. Hunting is enjoyed by 18 million Americans, and most conservation groups still consider it a valid activity in our modern society. But those who choose not to hunt are no less justified in their position. At the Council for Wildlife Conservation and Education, we find that the majority of Americans do not hunt, but that they have no objection to legal, ethical, regulated hunting. I hope that we've been able to pull some truth out of the emotion in this debate, and I hope we've all learned something. I know I have. Thanks, everybody. This program has not attempted to convince anyone that they should hunt or that they should not. But we do hope that if you find yourself in your own debate about hunting, you'll now be able to tell who is dealing with the facts and who is not.